I never thought I'd see the day where gaming itself is ashamed of the women that are in their games. And this is something that's happening in particular to Japanese developers, where they're ashamed of the looks and overall character designs of some of their legendary games and content. And that's what we're seeing with Square Enix as it censors its remake of Dragon Quest III, which is kind of upsetting a lot of fans in Japan and America, because the things they're doing is showing that they're heavily focused on removing any content that may show women in any appealing and attractive manner. And this is something that's been happening in the video gaming industry in the Western development sphere for a long time now, where we've been stripping away any attractive and appealing elements of female characters, and any character that has any attractiveness gets that removed from them. And I think this is what we've been seeing with Square Enix and a lot of the games that they're producing recently, specifically Final Fantasy VII Remake, where Tifa has been toned down by at least her looks, not so much where she's not the original character anymore, but where you just see this sense of shame that's coming over the Japanese devs as they develop these characters for these remakes, remasters, or any other property that they're producing. And I think a lot of people are seeing this and they're wondering what's going on. Why is it so sensitive to these elements when it comes to a lot of these female character designs? You can see this with Tifa, the original design. They have to change it up, they have to cover up, the skin needs to be covered up, and it has this Puritan look that we used to see and hear from conservatives in the 90s that wanted to cover up and felt that was shameful, that a lot of females and women were revealing their bodies. And now this has happened to the liberal side of America, where they feel like they need to cover up video game characters while doing the opposite in real life. And this is where the hypocrisy comes in for a lot of gamers that are complaining about the situation of covering up these models and designs, because when it comes down to reality, real life women that objectify themselves, that put themselves out there, it's always support and approval that comes for them. You can see this in this new OnlyFans era of society, where people support and champion women that show their bodies online for money. And this goes even further than that with other elements in society, where it's all about empowerment when it comes to revealing your body towards the opposite gender or the same gender or any genders. It's this gross hypocrisy that we're seeing in society today that is baffling gamers, where we're like, okay, we're covering up 3D models, but we're supporting our local teacher being on OnlyFans. And this is not even limited to what we're seeing on OnlyFans. You can see this on this overall market of selling yourself to other people, especially if you're a woman and you want to go out there and be purchased up by older men. We even have video gaming journalists promoting this lifestyle nowadays, saying it's a freeing act to actually go out there and sell yourself. And I'm thinking, okay, we have this culture in America where we're promoting this, but we want to strip that away from video games in particular, because it's not being done in the way we want to see it be done. And I think this is the hypocrisy that we're seeing in the video gaming industry, where we're censoring things that don't need to be censored. And I think this is the result that we're seeing with Square Enix as it censors Dragon Quest over these simple designs from a legend, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball. So seeing them go out and censor his original designs in this frumpy, unartistic way where it ruins his designs is kind of ultimately disrespectful. And people are taking that disrespect sincerely, where they're attacking now Square Enix, saying, why are you censoring this when nothing is censored in society right now? There is no moral standard anymore. Why do gamers and why do game developers have to stand high on some moral standard when the rest of society is going even lower in their moral standards? So this is the thing that we're seeing in the gaming industry, where now video game developers are ashamed of the women that they develop now. These 3D character models, where they feel like they have to cover them up, they have to change their personality, they have to change elements in the game to be in line with this modern political progressive ideology that is wrapped in a hypocrisy of its own making as well, when it comes to real life women objectifying themselves and selling themselves online. And I think this is the problem I have with this overall uglification process that we're seeing in the video gaming industry, in particular with games like Concord, where they go out of their way to disincentivize anything that is focused on a common female figure. And I think this is the thing we see here that kind of destroyed the company Firewalk Studios, where they were so hell-bent on avoiding anything attractive that they destroyed the looks of the entirety of their game. And I think this is the obsessiveness that we see with these radical political progressive organizations and team members that join up these game development companies, where they have this ideology that is super hypocritical to their ideals that they use in character design in video games, when in contrast, in reality, they have the opposite ideals in real life for real women. I think this is the situation we're seeing develop in reality, and people are just confused by this entirety of the situation. I think Square Enix itself is probably confused by this as well, because they're just following the Western development American standard that is being set out there, because they have all the DEI rules, all the organizations that are there to implement this ideology of social political progressivism that wants to limit the overall looks and appeals of certain characteristics of women, or when it comes to gender, racial politics, or representation. That's their main focus: finding representation, finding gender, racial equality within the games that they produce. And people wouldn't have a problem with that if it didn't produce substandard product and if it didn't ruin already classic designs. And I think this is the schism that we're seeing in the video gaming industry between gamers and game developers, especially Japanese game developers, where they're following this Western standard, and this Western standard is ruining their own designs. And I think we see that with Dragon Quest and a whole host of other games that are coming out, where we get these random underneath cover all pajamas and underwear slapped onto otherwise great character designs. And I think we see this all over the video gaming industry right now, especially in Japan, as it creeps over and it destroys these games that are coming out. And I think this is a situation that we want to avoid, but it's impossible to avoid, because companies like Square Enix are under the control and influence of consultancy firms like Sweet Baby Inc. You can see all the game developers that are under Sweet Baby Inc. that take their advice when it comes to representation, gender, social, body positivity factors that need to be included into their games. And you can see that result play out in all this coverings and just the remasters missing out the key material because they don't want to upset certain crowds that fit into a certain racial, gender, minority representation group. And I think this is the thing that's tearing down the video gaming industry today. And you can just see it with some of the designs that are being put out there, where it's just essentially ruining the characters' looks to fit into this body positivity ideology that seems to be in stark contrast if you're selling yourself online. And it's hurting. Square Enix is being forced to do things that are just not in line with the character creation and overall standards that they have set for their game. They're removing genders and subclasses to fit this modern day political ideology, which kind of just hurts the games that they're producing. You can see this happening with Square Enix, as their sales for a lot of these new games that are influenced by this ideology are not pulling in the sales that they wish it would pull in. And I think half in part that's part of their ideology of having exclusivity to PS5, but I think in part of that, people are just not actually getting that nostalgia from the games that they're producing anymore, because they're changing so much of the games that they're remastering and remaking. And I think this is the result where we're seeing here they're having that desperate attempt of being non-exclusive anymore, and I think it will. But did it help their previous offerings like Forspoken that kind of closed down a studio, Luminous Studios under Square Enix? No. They brought in the same political progressive consultancy firms to help them with the game, and the game was absolutely dead on the rival. And I think this is what we're seeing with a lot of titles coming out of Square Enix nowadays, where they're absolutely failing because they're almost ashamed of their product now. And who's going to buy a game that the company itself is ashamed of? Even if it's a remaster of a good game, you're going to be hesitant if the company that is remastering is covering it, changing things. They're like, okay, it seems like you don't like this game that I love. You're changing so much parts of it. How am I supposed to play this game that you hate now? And I think people and gamers, they can feel the hate through the remasters, and I think that's what we're seeing with Square Enix. And I think it's the opposite of what we're seeing with games like The First Descendant, where a Korean developer, Nexon, is unashamed of the characters they're creating and what they're doing with the overall models that they're producing for the game. They're eagerly making these beautiful designs and character models because they feel like that is the character models they want to see, and they know the gamers are willing to pay to see these type of character models. And I think this is this customer satisfaction that is not existent in the video gaming industry anymore, where developers developers are not there to make things beautiful anymore. And I think that's what Nexon just making a beautiful character design because they like how it looks and they know it's going to attract the attention of gamers as well. And I think this is the success that we see escaping Japan and Square Enix, and it's moving to South Korea very quickly. I think this is the success that we're seeing shifting in East Asia now, where Korea, China are taking up the mantle for a hesitant Japan that is eager to follow Western standards when Western standards are bankrupting multiple developers worldwide. But you tell me what you think about the situation. Do you think Square Enix in Japan are ashamed of women now? I think that is the case, and I think it's ruining some of the games that they're pushing out. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you disagree with me. You leave your thoughts, comments, like, share, and subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.